Be me, Alan. Lead software engineer at a company, let's call it Innovate Forward. Sounds fancy, but it's just a mid-sized tech firm trying to punch above its weight. My job is to stare at complex problems until they make sense, then translate that sense into code that makes the company money. It's a good gig mostly. I get to build things. I like the logic, the clean finality of a problem solved. There's a satisfaction in it that you don't get from most things in life. I lead a small team of guys who are all smarter than me in their own ways, which is exactly how you want it. There's Idris, our senior systems architect. He's been in the game for over 20 years. He's seen it all, from the dot-com boom and bust to the rise of the cloud. Idris has this permanent, slightly amused cynicism about everything corporate. He's forgotten more about network infrastructure than most people will ever learn. He's the foundation. If our systems are a house, he's the guy who designed the bedrock it sits on so it doesn't collapse into a sinkhole. Then there's Matthew, our data analyst. The kid is a wizard. He's quiet, barely says 2 words in meetings, but he can make data sing and dance. Give him a spreadsheet and a question, and he'll come back with a whole story, complete with charts and projections that are scary accurate. He's the guy who proves our instincts with cold, hard numbers. The 3 of us are the core of the technical department. We're the engine room of this company. We don't make a lot of noise, but we make everything run. For the past couple of years, things have been changing. The company got a new CEO, a woman named Hadley. She didn't come from a tech background. Her expertise was in marketing and brand management. Her whole thing was about image. She was very active on professional networking sites, always posting about corporate culture and empowerment. Specifically, female empowerment. Every all-hands meeting turned into a miniature TED Talk about smashing patriarchal structures in the tech space and fostering a culture of inclusive excellence. At first, none of us really cared. It was just corporate noise. We put our headphones on and wrote code. As long as we were left alone to do our jobs, she could talk about whatever she wanted. But the noise started getting louder. Promotions started getting weird. Good male engineers were getting passed over for women from other departments with less experience. When you asked why, the answer was always some vague HR speak about holistic value and diversifying leadership roles. Then she hired Greta. Greta was brought in as our new project manager. Her resume was all buzzwords: synergy, paradigm shifts, agile methodologies. It became clear within the first week that she didn't know the first thing about the technology we were building. I remember one meeting where she earnestly asked Idris if we could just download more bandwidth to speed up the servers for a demo. Idris, to his credit, just stared at her with a deadpan expression for a full 10 seconds before calmly explaining, "That's not how physics works." She would sit in our planning sessions, nodding along as if she understood, and then her only contribution would be to say things like, "Let's make sure we're leveraging our assets to maximize impact." We learned to just work around her. We'd have our real technical meetings in private, figure out the plan, and then just give Greta a simplified summary that she could put into her PowerPoint slides. She was essentially a human mascot for our department, and she was getting paid a manager's salary for it. And Hadley loved her. To Hadley, Greta was the perfect example of her new vision for the company. A strong woman leading a team of tech guys. We'd finish a major patch or a difficult feature launch, working through the night. And the next morning, a company-wide email would go out from Hadley congratulating Greta for her exceptional leadership and guidance in seeing the project through. Our names were never mentioned. We were just the team. It was grating, but we swallowed it. The work was still interesting, and the pay was decent. We were builders, not politicians. Then came Nexus. Nexus was our magnum opus, a new, from-the-ground-up software platform that was set to completely disrupt our industry. This wasn't just a project, it was our baby. For the better part of a year, we lived and breathed Nexus. I designed the core application logic. Idris architected a brilliant, scalable cloud infrastructure to run it on, something that could handle millions of users without breaking a sweat. Matthew built the analytics engine from scratch, a beautiful piece of work that could process vast amounts of data in real time. We poured everything we had into it. 16-hour days became the norm. Weekends ceased to exist. Our diets consisted of coffee, energy drinks, and whatever food could be delivered to the office. We argued, we debated, we rewrote entire sections of code at 3 a.m. because we found a better way to do it. It was the most challenging and rewarding work of our careers, and it paid off. We launched Nexus, and it was a monumental success. It worked flawlessly. Clients were ecstatic. The industry press started writing articles about us. Our little company was suddenly a major player. A few months after the launch, the news came down. Innovate Forward was nominated for the Innovation of the Year award, the biggest honor in our field. It was because of Nexus. For the first time in a long time, there was a real buzz of excitement in the office. This was it. This was the recognition for all that sacrifice. Hadley announced that the company would be buying a table at the awards gala, a fancy black tie event in a downtown hotel. We were all invited, Idris, Matthew, and I. Even we felt a sense of pride. Maybe this time, the people who actually built the thing would get a nod. The night of the gala arrives. We're all in rented tuxedos, feeling incredibly out of place among the sea of executives and venture capitalists. The ballroom is huge, chandeliers everywhere, waiters gliding around with trays of champagne. We make small talk at our table. Hadley is in her element, networking, laughing loudly, making sure everyone sees her. Greta is by her side, nodding at everything she says. We just want to get to the main event. Finally, after what feels like an eternity of boring speeches, they get to our category. The presenter, some tech celebrity, reads off the list of nominees. Our company's name is last. He opens the envelope, a dramatic pause. And the winner is Innovate Forward for Nexus. Our table erupts. People are clapping, cheering. I feel a genuine surge of joy. We did it. Hadley walks gracefully to the stage, looking like she was born for this moment. She accepts the heavy glass trophy and steps up to the microphone. She starts with the usual thank yous to the awards committee. Standard stuff. We're all watching the big screens, waiting. Then she pivots. You know, she says, her voice ringing with passion, when I took over this company, I had a vision. A vision to prove that the tech world, so long dominated by a certain way of thinking, was ready for a change. A murmur of approval ripples through the crowd. This award isn't just for a piece of software. This is a testament to what can be achieved when female leadership is empowered to lead from the front. My smile starts to feel a little stiff. Nexus was born from a different perspective. It was born from collaboration, from empathy, from the kind of intuitive design that can only flourish in a supportive, inclusive environment, free from the constraints of traditional, rigid hierarchies. I glance at Idris. His face is completely blank, but his eyes are like steel. He knows where this is going. Hadley continues, her voice swelling. This success would have been impossible without the brilliant women at Innovate Forward who are redefining what it means to be a leader in technology. Women who are smashing the glass ceiling with every project they touch. She holds up the award. And I have to give a very special thank you to the visionary who guided this project from conception to completion. Her tireless dedication and brilliant oversight were the driving force behind Nexus. Please give a round of applause for our phenomenal project manager, Greta. The spotlight swings over to our table and lands on Greta. She stands up and does this little, practiced, humble wave as the room applauds. My stomach feels like it's full of lead. It felt like a physical blow. Hadley mentions a few other women by name, from the marketing and sales departments, people who wrote press releases and made sales calls. Not a single mention of the engineers who actually created the product. Not a word about the architecture. Not a word about the code. Not a word about the data models. She doesn't mention Alan, Idris, or Matthew. In the official story of Nexus, we didn't exist. We were just part of the traditional rigid hierarchy that she had overcome. The speech ends. More applause. Hadley walks back to the table, beaming, holding the trophy like it's her firstborn child. "Isn't this wonderful?" she gushes to the table. I can't even make eye contact. I just stare at my water glass. The rest of the evening is a blur. People come by the table to offer congratulations. They all shake Hadley's hand. They all congratulate Greta. A couple of them nod vaguely in our direction, assuming we're just some junior code monkeys along for the ride. We are ghosts at our own celebration. The first thing I do when I get home is take off the stupid bow tie and throw it in the trash. I just stand in my apartment in silence. The feeling isn't just anger, it's a deep, profound sense of erasure, like someone just took a giant eraser and wiped our work, our effort, our existence right off the page. The next morning at the office is even more surreal. It feels like we've stepped into a propaganda film. There are new posters on the walls, big glossy photos of Hadley holding the award, with quotes from her speech in bold letters. Female leadership driving innovation. An email has already gone out to the entire company with a link to a blog post she wrote overnight. It's titled, How We Replace the Old Boys Club with a Sisterhood of Success. It's a work of fiction. It paints a picture of her and Greta as a dynamic duo, brainstorming brilliant ideas while the faceless, nameless tech team simply executed their vision. It was the most insulting, dishonest thing I've ever read. I walk over to the tech department. Idris is at his desk, staring at his monitors, not saying a word. Matthew is there too, clicking away at his keyboard with a controlled fury. The air is thick with unspoken rage. No one has to say anything. We all know. We all feel it. Then the calendar notification pops up on my screen. Nexus 2.0 Kickoff Synergy Session. Organizer, Greta? Of course. We file into the conference room. Greta is standing at the front by the whiteboard, holding a marker, buzzing with a newfound sense of self-importance. Okay, team, she says, her voice overly cheerful. What a night. The energy is just incredible. Now, we can't rest on our laurels. We need to channel this amazing momentum into Nexus 2.0. She starts drawing on the whiteboard. It's a mess of circles and arrows, labeled with words like synergize, actualize, and future forward. It's meaningless. It's corporate art therapy. Hadley and I have been envisioning the next phase, she continues. We're thinking bigger, more disruptive. We need to operationalize our success and leverage our core competencies to create a new paradigm. I just stare at her. She's not just a mascot anymore. She actually believes she's the one in charge. She believes the story Hadley told on stage. Idris, who had been silent until now, speaks up. His voice is calm, almost dangerously so. Greta, he says, the current server architecture is running at 85% capacity. For the features you're vaguely suggesting, we'd need to completely re-engineer the data pipeline to handle the projected load. Have you given any thought to the specifics of that? It's a simple, direct, technical question. Greta just blinks. You can see the panic in her eyes for a split second before the corporate mask slides back into place. Right, she says, waving her hand dismissively. Let's not get bogged down in the granular details right now, Idris. We're in the blue sky thinking phase. Let's focus on the what, not the how. That was it. That was the moment. The how was our job. The how was the part that took a year of our lives. And to her, it was just a granular detail, an afterthought. She saw us as glorified mechanics. You tell the mechanics what you want the car to do, and they're just supposed to make it happen. You don't thank the wrenches, you thank the driver. The meeting ends after another 20 minutes of her empty platitudes. We walk back to our desks. I look at Idris. He looks at me. I see the same thought reflected in his eyes. We are done being wrenches. A few hours later, a message pops up in our private group chat. It's from Idris. It's not a long message, just 2 words and a time. The pub, 6 p.m., I reply instantly. I'm there. Matthew's reply comes a second later. Me too. There's no more discussion to be had, no more venting. The time for that is over. Now it's time to plan. I arrive at the pub a few minutes before 6. It's a dive bar near the office, dark and quiet. The kind of place where you can have a real conversation without being overheard. Idris is already there, sitting in a booth in the back corner with a beer in front of him. He doesn't look angry anymore. He just looks tired, but resolved. I slide into the booth across from him. We don't say anything for a minute. The bartender comes over, I order a beer. Matthew arrives just as my drink does. He sits down next to me, puts his backpack on the seat. We sit in silence, the 3 of us. The architects of a multi-million-dollar product, sitting in a sticky booth, feeling like we'd just been robbed in broad daylight. Idris finally breaks the silence. So, he says, taking a slow sip of his beer, she really did it. Stood up there and told the whole world she and that empty suit built our engine. I just nod. The blog post was worse. She basically called us the old boys club that she had to overcome. Matthew, who has been staring into his glass of water, finally speaks. His voice is low and tight. It's a flawed narrative, he says, a narrative not supported by the data. He reaches into his backpack and pulls out his work laptop. Idris raises an eyebrow. Bringing your work to the bar, Matt? That's new? This isn't work, Matthew says, flipping the laptop open. This is an audit. He turns the screen towards us. It's covered in spreadsheets and graphs, but I can understand them. He's been busy. I ran the numbers, he says, pointing to the first chart. This is a breakdown of code commits to the Nexus repository over the last 12 months. As you can see, 95.7% of all accepted code was written by the three of us. He switches to another tab. This is a performance analysis of all major company projects over the last 2 years, correlated with the project leads. The projects led by our department have generated 82% of the company's net profit. The projects led by Greta have a net return of negative 16% after accounting for salaries and resources. He keeps going, chart after chart, data point after data point. He's quantified our value, he's quantified our contribution, and he's quantified the dead weight we've been forced to carry. It's all there in black and white, cold, undeniable facts. We are not just part of the company. In every measurable way, we are the company's value. Everything else is just packaging. Matthew closes the laptop. The data is clear, he says quietly. Our contributions are being systematically undervalued and reappropriated. Idris lets out a long, slow breath. He looks at me, then at Matthew. A slow grin spreads across his face. It's not a happy grin. It's sharp. Well, Idris says. It seems we have a bit of leverage. And that's when everything changed. We weren't just 3 angry guys in a bar anymore. We were 3 strategic assets with a plan. The plan we hatched in that bar wasn't born from a single flash of brilliance. It was more like assembling a piece of machinery. Each of us added a critical component. Idris, the veteran, provided the strategy. He laid it out for us. Quitting was easy. Anyone could quit. But if we just walked out one by one, they would control the story. They'd paint us as disgruntled, difficult employees. They'd manage our departures, hire replacements, and the machine would keep churning. He said our move couldn't be a complaint. It had to be a statement of value, delivered at the moment of maximum operational impact. That's when my eyes lit up. The big client presentation for Nexus 2.0. It was in 2 weeks. It wasn't just a sales pitch. It was a deep dive technical demonstration for their entire engineering leadership. The client was our company's white whale, a massive enterprise account that would secure our financial future for the next decade. Losing that contract wouldn't just be bad, it would be catastrophic. That was our moment, the point of maximum leverage. Matthew provided the tactical advantage. He said our resignations needed to be clean and professional. No angry letters, no dramatic confrontations. Just a simple 2-sentence email sent simultaneously. He said we should also prepare our documentation. But not just any documentation. It had to be maliciously compliant. Every line of code would be commented, every function described, every API endpoint documented. On paper, it would look perfect, professional, thorough. But it would be documentation without context. It would explain the what, but not the why. It wouldn't contain the years of institutional knowledge, the dead ends we explored, the reasons why we chose one algorithm over another. It would be a perfect detailed map of a country, given to someone who doesn't know how to read. To an expert, it would be a treasure trove. To a novice like Greta, it would be useless gibberish. My role was coordination. I was the project lead after all, just not the one with the fancy title. We would spend the next 2 weeks acting as if nothing had changed. We would attend meetings. We would write code. We would nod along to Greta's buzzwords. And in the background, we would prepare. We synced our calendars. We agreed on the exact time, the day before the presentation, at 5 p.m. sharp. We would send the emails, gather our personal belongings, and walk out the door. Then, we would turn off our work phones and become ghosts. The 3 of us shook hands over the sticky table in that dingy bar. It felt more significant than any contract I'd ever signed. It was a pact, a declaration of independence. The next 2 weeks were the strangest of my professional life. It was like living in a spy movie. On the surface, everything was normal. We went to work, we did our jobs. We sat in meetings while Greta talked about creating stakeholder value and optimizing our go-to-market strategy. We would nod seriously, ask a few clarifying questions to keep up appearances, and then go back to our desks and quietly plan the corporate equivalent of a controlled demolition. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. I remember one afternoon, Hadley called an impromptu all-hands meeting in the main conference room. She stood at the front, glowing with pride, and gave a speech about the new culture of trust and transparency she was building. She talked about how important it was for everyone to feel valued. I stood at the back of the room, next to Idris, and it took every ounce of my self-control not to laugh out loud. Valued. She used that word, after she had publicly erased our existence. Meanwhile, the real work was happening in the shadows. We used our lunch breaks to take calls from recruiters. It turns out that when you're the lead engineer on an award-winning product, people want to talk to you. I'd be sitting in my car in the parking garage, walking a recruiter from a rival company through my resume, while watching Hadley and Greta walk back from their 2-hour lunch at some fancy restaurant. Idris had it easier. He had a network of contacts built up over 2 decades. He made a few calls, and offers started materializing. Matthew was methodical. He updated his profiles on all the job sites with keywords from the Nexus project, and his inbox exploded. We were all lining up our parachutes before we jumped out of the plane. We built a shared encrypted document where we tracked our progress. Offers received, contracts reviewed. We were coordinating our escape. There was a close call one day. I was on a call with a recruiter from a major tech giant, hidden away in a small, unused office. The offer was good, really good. Better pay, a bigger team, more interesting problems. I was just getting into the details when the door creaked open. It was Greta. My blood ran cold. I quickly ended the call, stammering something about a personal matter. She looked at me with suspicion. "Everything okay, Alan? You've been away from your desk for a while. We need to stay focused for the big presentation." I just nodded, my heart pounding. "Of course, just dealing with something. I'm all focused." She didn't press it, but the look she gave me was unsettling. For a moment, I thought the whole thing was about to unravel. By the end of the second week, we were all set. We had all accepted new positions at different companies. We had signed the contracts. Our start dates were a month away, giving us a much-needed break. Our documentation was complete, a beautiful, useless masterpiece. Everything was in place. All we had to do was press the button. The day of the resignation arrived. The office was buzzing with an almost frantic energy. Everyone was focused on the big presentation the next day. Hadley and Greta were striding around the office like generals before a major battle, issuing orders, reviewing slides. They were completely absorbed in their own narrative of impending victory. The 3 of us were preternaturally calm. It was the calm that comes when you know the outcome of a chaotic event. We did our work, we answered emails, we attended the final pre-presentation meeting. Greta was at the whiteboard again, talking about owning the narrative and projecting confidence. She gave us our roles for the demo. She wanted us to sit in the front row and be ready to provide technical support if needed. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. "Don't worry," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "We'll be ready." At 4:45 p.m., I sent a final message to our private group chat. "Ready?" The replies came back instantly. "Ready." "Ready." I looked across the office floor. Idris caught my eye and gave me a slow, deliberate nod. Matthew was already packing his personal items into his backpack. I took a moment to look around, at the desk where I'd spent countless nights, at the whiteboard covered in my own frantic scribbles. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel anger anymore. I just felt a quiet, clinical sense of finality. At 4:59, I opened my email drafts folder. The message was simple. "To whom it may concern, please accept this email as notification that I am resigning from my position at Innovate Forward, effective immediately. Sincerely, Alan." My finger hovered over the send button. The clock on my computer ticked over to 5:00 p.m. I clicked. I stood up and put my laptop in my bag. I grabbed the few personal items from my desk, a coffee mug, a picture, a couple of books. Idris was already walking towards the exit. Matthew fell into step beside him. I joined them. We walked past Hadley's glass-walled office. She was on a conference call, laughing about something, completely oblivious. We didn't look back. We swiped our badges for the last time and walked out into the late afternoon sun. A few blocks away, we stopped. I pulled out my work phone. Idris and Matthew did the same. One by one, we powered them down and took out the SIM cards. It was done. We went back to the same pub, the same booth. We ordered a round of beers, and this time, we didn't sit in silence. We talked about our new jobs, about the projects we were going to be working on, about the future. For the first time in months, we weren't just complaining. We were building again. Of course, we couldn't know for sure what was happening back at the office, but we could imagine. We pictured Hadley finishing her call, checking her email, seeing the first resignation, a frown, an annoyance, seeing the second one, from Idris. The frown deepens into confusion. This is strange. Seeing the third one, from Matthew. The confusion turning to shock. Then, to disbelief. This has to be a joke, a coordinated prank. Then the slow, dawning horror as she realizes it's real. We pictured her frantic calls to our work phones, going straight to voicemail. The calls to our personal numbers, which she didn't have. The panic spreading. Her storming out of her office, demanding to know where we are, only to be told we were seen leaving. The emergency meeting she would have called with Greta. The initial bluster and rage. How dare they? This is unprofessional. This is sabotage. The eventual terrifying realization that the people who built, understood, and were supposed to present Nexus 2.0 tomorrow were gone. The next day we met for breakfast. We didn't talk much about work. We were trying to decompress, but around 10 a.m., the time the big client meeting was scheduled to start, we all fell silent. We all knew what was likely happening in that conference room across town. Greta, standing at the front of the room, sweating under the expensive lights. Her PowerPoint slides, full of beautiful graphics and marketing nonsense. Her confident, practiced opening. And then, the first question from the client's chief technology officer. A simple, direct question. Something like, "Your new platform boasts real-time data processing. Can you walk us through the concurrency model and how you've addressed potential race conditions in the core architecture?" We could just picture the look on Greta's face, the blank stare, the desperate search for a buzzword to save her. Well, our model is very robust and leverages a synergistic approach to data integrity. And the follow-up question from the client's lead engineer. "Okay, but are you using optimistic locking, a multi-version concurrency control system? What's the actual implementation?" We imagined her fumbling, deflecting, trying to pivot back to her talking points about customer value. We imagined the growing looks of confusion, then annoyance, on the faces of the client's technical team. They weren't there to hear a sales pitch. They were there to inspect the engine, and the person presenting to them didn't know how to open the hood. We pictured the moment when the client's CTO would hold up a hand and say, "I think we've heard enough. Who actually built this?" The fallout was faster and more spectacular than we could have ever imagined. A friend of Idris's who worked for the client company messaged him later that day. The message said the meeting was a complete and utter train wreck. The client had pulled out of the deal before lunch. The news must have ripped through the company like a shockwave. Within a week, the first articles started appearing in the tech press. They were vague at first, talking about a sudden leadership shakeup at Innovate Forward. Then the leaks started. Anonymous sources from within the company started talking to reporters. They told the story of the disastrous presentation, of the mass resignation of the entire core engineering team right before it. The stock price of our former company, which was publicly traded, nosedived. Then came the Glassdoor reviews, a flood of them. Current and former employees, finally feeling safe to speak, writing scathing accounts of the toxic culture, the cronyism, the complete disconnect between management's public image and the reality of working there. Hadley's name was mentioned in almost every single one. The board of directors had no choice. 2 weeks after our departure, the official announcement came. Hadley was stepping down as CEO to pursue other opportunities. We all know what that means. A few weeks after that, the three of us got a call. It was from the CEO of one of the biggest and most respected tech firms in the country, a direct competitor to Innovate Forward. He wanted to meet with all three of us, together. We went to their headquarters, a massive, impressive campus. The CEO wasn't like Hadley. He was an older guy who was a legendary programmer back in the day. He still had a whiteboard covered in system diagrams in his office. He was an engineer at heart. He didn't beat around the bush. He told us he had followed our work on Nexus for a year. He said it was the most elegant piece of engineering he had seen in a decade. He told us he had also heard about what happened. He said he wasn't surprised. He'd seen that kind of corporate theater before. Then he made his offer. He didn't offer us jobs. He offered us a department. He wanted to create a new advanced R&D division, focused on solving the hardest problems in the industry. And he wanted the three of us to build it and run it together. Autonomy, a massive budget, and a clear mandate: build the future. We didn't even have to negotiate. We just said yes. Today, that's where I am. I lead a team of some of the brightest minds I've ever met. Idris is designing systems on a scale he only ever dreamed of. Matthew is building predictive models that are changing the game. We're doing the best work of our lives. We don't talk about Innovate Forward much anymore. It feels like a lifetime ago. It's not a story about revenge. We never set out to destroy the company. We just wanted respect. We wanted our work to be acknowledged. When it wasn't, we simply took our work elsewhere. We proved that value isn't a narrative. It's not a speech you give at an awards ceremony. It's real. It's measurable. And if you don't respect it, it will get up and walk out the door.